I'm Shirley David, and I'm the president of Community Enterprises. Thank you all for coming this evening. I know it's a rainy evening, but so it's really great. And I know that if you went to our Facebook page, that you were told yesterday that it would be raining tonight. Our program tonight is called Soil and Water Management Challenges in Southwest Hawaii County. I guess that's otherwise known as South Kona. So what I'm going to do is just turn the program now over to Jane Clement, and she'll introduce our speakers this evening.
Thank you, Shirley. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the West Hawaii Forums, brought to you by Community Enterprises. We generally hold our monthly forums in the County Council Chamber at the West Hawaii Civic Center, but we are here in this special venue tonight at the invitation of your district representative, Ms. Miley David. And because tonight's subject matter is something of great interest and importance to this agricultural farming community here in Southwest Kona. And that is soil and water management issues, like Shirley mentioned earlier. And we are honored to have a couple of content experts here with us tonight who will be talking about the challenges we face in our conservation efforts and practices, and the cascading effects of climate change on our water resources, biodiversity, and local livelihoods. But before we hear from them, I am pleased to introduce our special guest tonight. I am privileged to actually work with her every day in the office. She will be providing us with updates and report on current and upcoming projects in her district, which is really, really exciting. Ms. Miley David serves on the Hawaii County Council for District 6, which includes portion of North Kona, South Kona, Ka'u, and the greater Volcano area. Miley also chairs the Committee on Human Services and Social Services and vice chair of the Committee on Planning. Ms. David was born in Kealakekua, Kona in 1952. She attended public schools and graduated from this very high school, Konawaina High School, in 1970. Miley is the younger of two daughters of Edward and Christine Medeiros, and comes from a family heritage deeply rooted in culture, ranching, and coffee farming in South Kona. Ladies and gentlemen, Councilwoman Miley David.
Thank you for coming tonight. This is the first time we're having one here, and I think I've talked with Shirley and Community Enterprises as they hold meetings at the Civic Center. I asked one time, hey, can you guys come up to South Kona and have some forums, informational meetings for the community. And so this is the what do they call this? The first launching of this. Oh, there I am. Okay, now, of a meeting such as this, and thank you very much, Community Enterprises. And also I want to thank Mary Robley and Steve Sakala, I remembered, for being here tonight and for all the information that they're going to provide. So what I want to just run down, and I have a piece of paper just to remind me to keep on track of the things that have been happening and we've done in District 6. But before that, this cafeteria is where I had lunch. And it's really kind of heartwarming to be here in this role, whereas the last time I was here, I was in that line waiting for my lunch. So I'm going to just give you a really brief update on a couple legislations that I have introduced. And one was the amending the general plan, which is going through review, a 10-year review right now. And it's to amend the general plan to implement the Ahupua'a system within our planning. So in our land use planning, because I think for this island, I think we have by experience realized that what we do on the top of this island affects everything down to the ocean. So that basic cultural concept, I really think we've been moving in that direction. And I hope that with the general plan amendment, it would be a basic tool in trying to be mindful of what we do on this island so that it doesn't affect anyone negatively. So that was one. I also worked in getting no parking signs installed down at Manini Beach because of the community's concern about public health and safety. The parking was so bad that they could not even get a rescue vehicle through that subdivision. So I worked with Public Works and Ron Thiel, the engineer, and the community, and we got some no parking signs installed. There are parking areas still, but people are now unable to park on the road, on that one-lane road, and if they do, then our police department have the ability to ticket people, because in the past, there was nothing that they could do. So that was a good thing for that community. And I will skip over being the chair of the Human Services and Social Services Committee, but I will note that on Tuesday, we approved 9-0 the recommendations of the ad hoc committee to fund over 140 nonprofit organizations that provide much needed social services to our communities around the island. And we awarded $1.5 million to these nonprofit organizations. And I must say, we had requests totaling over $5 million, grant requests. So what we had to work with was a very difficult task, because all the services, every organization provided meaningful and much needed services. Everybody's being cut, and this is our way of trying to help. So I'm really happy that's done. It's going to be in the budget now. And I want to thank Mayor Kenoy also, because we are only required to fund $1 million by code for the nonprofit grants. But for the last, say, 4 years that I can remember, the mayor has allocated an additional $500,000. So we have at least $1.5 million to share. And so we did that. And now I'm going to go, because my district is so small, I'm going to go by districts and give you a brief rundown. South Kona, Ho'okena Beach, for years, I believe since 2008, their civil defense siren was not working, or it wasn't existent. So in all the disasters since then, they had to rely on people in the village, and I live in Ho'okena, so family members calling them and warning them. So when I took office, I know that there was a siren that was supposed to be done. Why is it taking this long? And really, what it ended up being was the 3 locations that the state initially proposed. One was too close to a resident, and she didn't want it there, and I don't blame her. And the other 2 were, there were some EV and cultural site. So I told the guy from the state, and he's very, very helpful. I said, why are you guys looking in the village? Because couldn't you put it up high on the road going down to Ho'okena, where it overlooks the bay, so that everybody can hear it? And being from Oahu, they had no clue. So I sent them a map and said, here. So we're going to get a siren down there. They had to, and thank you to McCandless Ranch, who actually gave us the county permission to put the siren in their easement, roadway easement. So by the end of the year, he promised he would have a siren down in South Kona. Okay. Hononau Rodeo Arena. I don't see any cowboys here, but it's not only a rodeo arena. And I need to tell you that this is such a needed improvement for South Kona. The rodeo arena has been in operation since 1950s. And last year was the first time that they could not have a rodeo due to the condition of the arena, the safety issues for the animals. And I was just stunned because my family used that arena all the time when I was growing up. So they had community gatherings down there. So when I approached the mayor and said, we really need the arena to be improved, and while you're doing that, can you please include a community center? An open-air community center, not a really fancy one, but somewhere that people can have parties, kids can learn, you can have conferences down there, and he agreed. And so that's going to be done in September or October this year. And I really believe that we now will have an extra community center besides Yano Hall for the South Kona community, or Kona, basically. So that I'm really, really pleased with, and I thank the mayor and his administration for that. Talked to Mr. Lee this afternoon. The Hokulia bypass paving started from Hokulia, so he's estimating that the concrete paving should be done by the end of May, approximately. It'll get it to Napopo Junction, and then, but that's exclusive of all the sidewalk improvements along the road. So we're moving on that. Guardrails at St. John's Church Road. I believe that was brought to my attention by the members of St. John's Church that the needed guardrails weren't done, and so working with the church members and Mr. Lee managed to get that put on his project list, and it's installed. And Susan Kim was so nice to come and thank me for that. But it needed a guardrail. That place was so dangerous. Contingency funding. I funded Milili'i, the village, for $5,000 during the dengue outbreak, and also the Hononau Community Association down there for mosquito traps. And I believe the traps will be distributed throughout South Kona all the way to Ocean View. So in Ocean View, we're moving along. Ocean View, I'm preparing a CIP legislation for Kahuku Park improvements. I have a bill that will be heard pretty soon to change the Kahuku Park to a non-drinking facility due to the concerns of the community members that because it's a drinking facility, or permitted drinking facility, the children that gather there every afternoon, it's becoming a real problem. And now at least, if it's a non-drinking facility, when you have parties, you can have liquor if you get a liquor license. So it's almost like any other county facility that will allow you to have liquor for your parties, but with a permit. I'm also putting in a request to Governor Ige to reappropriate the $725,000 for the plans and designs of the Ocean View second well. That paperwork is in progress, and on May 3rd, the council resolution, we'll hear the resolution for that. Ocean View Transfer Station, that's in the progress. They're going to have a real full facility transfer station in Ocean View. I'm not sure where though yet. There's some difficulty in the location, but that will happen. And as far as contingency in Ocean View, I funded $5,000 to the fire station, Tropicare, which I have some brochures. Tropicare is a 1-week free medical dental screening, the flyers outside, for 1 week in Ocean View and 1 week in Pahoa. And it will also contain vision screening. So I funded that one, and also the summer programs for Pahala, Kahuku, and Na'alehu. In Na'alehu, the Na'alehu Playground, we secured additional funding to complete and start the project, so that's going to start in May. Video site in Na'alehu now saves the county council some rental fees, annual rental fees, and we have our video conferencing in Na'alehu at the state office building. And also, I prepared a resolution to acquire via public access open space fund, Kahua Olohu, which is a 13-acre plus Makahiki gaming field in Na'alehu. Pahala, the Ka'u gym is nearing completion, and the Pahala playground is set to have its grand opening pretty soon, I think in the next month or so. The volcano transfer station was completed, and contingency, $15,000 for the roof repairs on Cooper Center, and also $5,000 of my contingency to fund the water tank and pump for the Cooper Center in case of emergencies. You know, these are not real big things, but I really think for the communities that we serve, little things like this, you know, touch the people because they can see and feel it. So I'm really happy that I could do all of these things. I'm working on the next round after this budget season, but I really thank you for your attention, for your support, and I'll let you guys have the floor now. I think I'm done, but thank you. Aloha.
Thank you very much, Auntie Maile. I finally call her Auntie Maile. Everybody calls her Auntie Maile in the office. Is this your first term as a council member?
Yes.
Okay, so as you can see, she's been really, really busy, and she's done a tremendous job in getting all these projects done in her district, and it was a lot. And some of them are really big projects, and she managed to get them done, and you know, some of them are in the process of getting done. So thank you, Auntie Miley, for your hard work.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Productive soils and clean water are essential elements for economic and social prosperity and environmental sustainability. Our very survival depends on how well we manage, how well we protect and responsibly manage these two vital resources. And so our first speaker will hopefully provide us with information on the different technical assistance available and tools to manage and protect land and water resources. Okay, Mary Robley is a representative for the Kona Soil and Water Conservation District, a governmental subdivision of the state of Hawaii organized under Hawaii State Law, Chapter HRS 180. KSWCD incorporates available technical, financial, and educational resources and to apply them in manner that serves the need of local land users in their conservation and management of soil, water, and natural resources. The KSWCD serves land users within and the community of North and South Kona on the island of Hawaii and is committed to the promotion of wise land use and resource stewardship. Mary has lived on the Big Island for the past 13 years, and in the 9 last years, she has worked for KSWCD. Her education and professional experiences include an EPA Watershed Academy's Watershed Management Certificate, a bachelor's in communications from Fitchburg State College in Massachusetts, and a certificate in paralegal studies from Quincy College, also in Massachusetts. Her watershed management experience and related knowledge has developed during her time with KSWCD, supplemented with online training, observing the land, and field experience. In Mary's own words, in my current position, I have had the unique opportunity to walk much of the land in North and South Kona, including forest, pasture, and cropland. The people managing those land have taught me a great deal, and most of what I learned about protecting our watersheds is that how we treat the land will impact the way the land treats us. Please welcome Mary Robley.
Good evening. First, I would like to thank the Community Enterprises for giving me this opportunity to present information to you, because it is vitally important for our survival. I'd also like to thank Miley Davis and Steve Sakala for joining me up here, because I'd be nervous if I was by myself. Our watersheds are very unique. We have very unique soil and water issues. There are natural causes for that. And I could start with the age of our landscape. In West Hawaii, pretty much on every inch of North and South Kona, everything has been wiped out with a lava flow at least once in the past 5,000 years. So we're walking around on land that is generally no more than 5,000 years old. And when you think about geologic time, that is nothing. That is less than a drop in the bucket. As a result of that, we have very thin soil. Deep soil here is considered to be about 2 feet. That's a lot of soil. The USDA, Natural Resource Conservation Service, I work in their office in Kealakekua, and they have financial assistance programs to help people address natural resource concerns. And one of them is our thin soil. Their recommendations are always around, and this is where I've learned a lot of this stuff, we have to keep our soil covered. It's very thin, it's very fragile. If you drive down South Kona and you go past the first lava field, you'll see where all the ohia trees are and a little ring of leaf litter underneath it. That is baby soil. That's how all our soil started here. We have organic soil. If it's not kept covered with vegetation, it will just disappear into thin air like a fine compost pile will. And again, if you drive around South Kona, sometimes in North Kona, you see coffee farms where the coffee trees are coming up out of the rocks. It's just an amazing thing to witness. That is a result of a couple of different things. One of the most notorious is what's been referred to as clean culture farming. It is a cultural farming method that was brought over with Asian immigrants. This insistence on neatness and nothing on the field except the crop really harms our soils. They use poisons. Poison harms soil. Soil is a living organism. In a teaspoon of soil, there should be millions and millions of microbes and little bugs and just all kinds of things that make it healthy. When you spray Roundup, or years ago, DD214 and whatever the chemicals are, you kill those little microorganisms and you make your soil really sick, and it can't do what it's supposed to do. And what soil is supposed to do is what the natural cycles are, the water cycle, the nitrogen cycle. I'm not a chemist, so I don't know what they all are, but your soil is supposed to be able to work those cycles all the time, and if you have healthy soil, they will. So the age of our landscape gives us very thin soil. Our soils are organic, which take a long time to develop because it's all from leaf litter. We need to continuously feed them. What do we feed soil? You feed organic soil, organic matter. A lot of folks have discovered that mulch from the Greene County Waste Program is a great thing on their farm. Others are concerned, rightfully so. Anytime you bring an input onto your land, whether it's mulch, something from Soils Plus, something from Home Depot, Lowe's, the Home and Garden, whenever you bring something onto your land, there is an inherent risk. If you consider everything on your land as a resource, you may not have that many inputs. Guinea grass, what an awesome resource for building soil. Guinea grass is the most amazing thing in the world. Let it grow. Weeds, let them go, weed whack them down. You are now feeding the soil when you weed whack your weeds. And organic matter, you put organic matter on the top of your soil by weed whacking, it's all over. Soil needs organic matter in it. A plant's root system is the organic matter in soil. Root systems also hold soil in place. Mulch is a great way to cover soil. It moderates soil temperature. I was talking to somebody, he was kind of surprised at how well his plants did after having some county green waste mulch put on it. And he asked me if it had to do with nitrogen, and I'm not a chemist. I don't know. Maybe. I think it has a lot to do with moderating soil temperature. Most plants do not like to have hot feet. So you put mulch on it, the sun's rays are not baking the soil. Probably the worst thing you can do to your land here is leave your soil bare. I tell folks, just throw some hazardous waste on it. If that's what you want to do with your soil, you might as well throw hazardous waste on it. It's going to be useless. It's going to disappear. It won't be here 15 years from now, and you will have a pile of rocks. We call them rock farms. Weeds. If you can't get a nice vegetative cover going, let your weeds go if they're grassy. Grassy weeds are fine. They can be a pain in the neck, but they're fine. They feed your soil. They feed your soil. There are some weeds you want to get rid of. Some of the most invasive weeds. Let's say African tulip trees. Some people love African tulip trees. They don't belong here. They are very invasive. If you've ever been on a quarter acre of land that is covered with African tulip trees, you've seen what happens when you cut one down. 5 grow up out of the root over there. So if you have African tulips, you either got to get a bulldozer in there and rip out the entire root system, which I do not advocate, or you have to poison them. Poisons are a tool that can be used responsibly and reliably and provide you with the results you want. But you have to follow the label directions. You can't just be spraying Roundup willy-nilly. The county does that for us.
Hint, hint.
No, you can see the road crew spraying Roundup on the vegetation along the road. There is a need to remove that vegetation. People have to be able to have sight lines and see what's coming out of an intersection. But there's other ways besides poison to do it. And I know the county is working on it. Yeah. I know of a number of people who have been somewhat hostile about this subject towards the county, but they are working on it to their credit. A lot more mowing going on, and that will help feed the soil. Last year when we had those flash floods, some of the worst roadside erosion I saw also had signs of Roundup use. That stuff they're killing, as opposed to just weed whacking or mowing, you kill the roots. The soil right along the road is now not going to be held in place when we have rain, and it will just get on the road, and then Public Works will come by with their heavy equipment and move it. Why? You've spent the money to spray the Roundup, now you've spent the money to clean up the soil that would have stayed put if you had mowed it. There's so many interlocking things when it comes to land management. How to prevent this erosion? I'm going off in very many different tangents because there are so many out there. How do you prevent erosion? You got to have a root system. You got to have your soil covered. The flash flooding last year, the people with the most significant damage either did not have any conservation cover on their land, they had a lot of bare soil, or they had a water course going through their land, which has its own set of challenges. And that gets back to being on a very young landscape because those water courses aren't very deep. And if you have a water course that's 1 foot deep and you get 4 inches of rain in an hour, that water course is reached capacity in probably 15 minutes. And now where does all that extra water go? It creates a new water course. Or it goes down the road and winds up in the ocean, bringing a lot of our soil with it. Keep your soils covered. It doesn't have to be a nice lawn. You could create with your landscaping, or if it's a residential situation, or a farm, Steve will get into this, you can do layers of farming with landscaping, you can add natives. I brought a bunch of information. Did everybody see this? This is a really cool book. It has the climate zones in North and South Kona, and then a climate zone map, and you try to figure out where you are on here, and you'll be in a number. I think we're probably in number 4 here, climate zone 4. These photographs all have a number associated with them. That's the climate zone. It will grow it. Take this with you when you go to Lowe's and they're having their sale on native plants. Because if you live in climate zone 2, you do not want a plant that will only grow in climate zone 10. So you could accommodate for that. You can grow plants that want moisture where it's dry. You need a lot of irrigation. It's really hard to grow things that like dry weather where it's naturally moist. So you can overcome one fairly easily, but at an expense. But it's difficult to overcome the other. So use this book. Bring it to Lowe's. When they have a sale on native plants, read the little tag. See if it's in here. This is not all-inclusive by any stretch, but it will give you a start. So that you can properly vegetate your land. And if you get plants that belong in your climate zone, your plant maintenance level goes way down. Again, to what will grow in your area, these are ecological site description maps. If you can figure out where you are on this map generally and tell me when we break or something, I have a document that will tell you what it would have looked like pre-contact. And it will also show you what it would look like in various stages of degradation. And it will also tell you how to get from those various stages of degradation back to a pristine forest, if that's what you want, or to pasture land, if that's what you want, or to farmland. It's always very difficult work to bring degraded land to any land use you want it to be other than junk. You have to clear it. You probably want to make sure that feral pigs and cattle and sheep and goats don't have access to it. Oh, the pigs, they're a whole other story. Lots of information in here, including a newsletter that we just released today. And the cover article has to do with fencing and pigs and the benefit of conservation cover. This farmer had a lot of soil losses in front of this gate, in front of this fence during the flash floods last year. He lost about 1.5 cubic yards of soil. It really, for the size of his farm, is nothing. It was still more than he should have. He has what's called a T factor of 1. What is a T factor? It's a tolerance factor for how much soil your land can lose annually on a per acre rate in tons. I'd put $100, everybody in this room has a T factor of 1. Because our land is only 5,000 years old and it takes forever to build soil. So I just presume everybody's got a T factor of 1. You could be on Pahoehoe, which would give you what they call a hydrologic rating of probably a D, which means there's a lot of ponding and flooding and the soil can really go down the hill easily. If you have lava, it drains a lot better. Probably have a hydrologic soil group of A, which I didn't bring any information on. But this farmer had 1.2 acres impacted by water flow. All this green grass back here, that had sheet flow over it for days and days and days. But there was grass on it, holding it in place. So when all the water receded, the only soil he lost was soil pigs had access to. This newsletter was sent to the person in charge of NRCS throughout the entire country because I have been advocating for this, and I know they're talking about it in Washington, and I wanted him to see firsthand the benefits of having a fence. When the Kona Soil and Water Conservation District advocates fencing to protect land from pigs and to protect the soil, I would, if I was NRCS, I'd say, yeah, we'll give you a fence, but you have to rebuild your soil and finish it off with conservation cover. No, you don't just get a fence, sorry. You got to do something to really make that fence worth the taxpayers' money. And let's just say on this island, one of the producers who had some damage from rain last year was complaining about the person, Malka, of him. All right, yeah, well, rain flows downhill, so that always happens. This was a farmer who practiced clean culture farming. He lost a lot of soil. Person a quarter mile down the road is cursing him because all his soil is now in this person's kitchen. So the moral of that story is don't blame the person above you because you are probably above somebody else. You work together as a community, and watershed management, particularly here, has to be community-wide because everybody has a small piece of land. If everybody kept their small piece of land vegetated, we would have so much less soil erosion. And that's why I'm really grateful for this opportunity to educate you as to the importance of having vegetation on your land. And with grass, you see nice grass in coffee fields. I advocate for taller grass. Taller grass will slow water down. I didn't get into a lot of species for grasses. There's information in here on cover crops that Steve will cover more. But there is a grass species, if you have a water course going through your land, there is a grass species that can help you stabilize the banks of that. Or if you have a steep slope that you are having problems with water coming down. There's a grass, and write this down, vetiver, V-E-T-I-V-E-R, is that how it? Vetiver grass. Mm-hmm. Yep. It is a grass with like 20-foot deep roots if you have 20 feet of soil. It can be ripped out here. I've seen it in photographs after flash flooding. It was ripped out because it was grown on Pahoehoe, which had very thin soil because it's only 5,000-year-old land. See, all these problems, they all go back to one another, and to figure out solutions it can be really complicated. You can figure out a solution for this problem, but that solution might enhance this problem or create one you weren't even aware of. Our flash flooding demonstrates that problem. There is a poor family down on Plumeria Road in town. They're not in a flood zone. They bought a house here in Hawaii. They remodeled it, used their entire life savings. They didn't even have a mortgage on it. There is a drainage easement near their house. As I understand it, somebody wanted a bigger backyard, so they put a concrete wall across this drainage easement. This drainage easement probably hadn't seen water for 20 years, and you hear that all the time. Oh, there's no water coming down there. There's no water coming down there. First of all, if it's a drainage easement, somebody spent a lot of money to put it there, and they didn't do it for nothing. If it's a watercourse made by Mother Nature, she put it there for a reason. There might not have been water there 20 years ago or in the whole time you've lived here, but that is a place where water will flow. Many of you are familiar with Mahalani Ranch, or Barbara Nobrega, that's her ranch. With this flooding that we had last year, she said it was the first time since 1968 all the major watercourses flowed at the same time. So your watercourse may not have flowed for 15 years, but water put it there, and it's coming back. Unless somebody's done something really crazy up there, and even then, because our landscapes are so young, it could very well find its way back. 2007, there were terrible floods. South Kona fruit stand got wiped out. People are saying somebody did something at Mauka, somebody did something at Mauka, and that very well may have happened, but Mother Nature may have done something up Mauka as well. We have big rocks. They're on the sides of these watercourses. There's a lot more rain up at the top of the Ki'ilai Stream. Matter of fact, the top of the Ki'ilai Stream is always running. I know of a ranch that has a dam and a water permit on the Ki'ilai Stream, and they keep 100,000 gallons worth of stock water available for their 10,000-acre ranch out of the Ki'ilai Stream. It's as you get further down the mountain, it becomes perennial or intermittent. It runs when it rains. Where was I going with that? When the South Kona fruit stand got wiped out, people were saying somebody blocked the watercourse. What if? I didn't see it, so I don't know. But we get a little bit of soil with some really big rocks. Erosion happens around us all the time. We have earthquakes all the time. What if, by just a freak of nature, some rocks rolled into the watercourse, way up Mauka, where it could very well have happened, or pigs could have done this damage. It didn't have to be a person. But the water got changed. The direction of the water got changed, whether somebody did it, or Mother Nature did it, or the pigs did it. I really don't think anybody ever intends to harm their downstream neighbors to the extent that some people have been harmed. But it's an educational thing. People have to understand, because our landscapes are so young, our watercourses are so poorly defined, so poorly developed, it's really easy for them to have their capacity exceeded and a new watercourse get developed. Because of that. I've seen it in a farm. The Ki'ilai Stream, again, across the street from the South Kona fruit stand. That thing was raging. Well, they do have a little rivulet that has come off of that going through the farm, and they repaired it, but you can bet water has a memory. Whenever that capacity is exceeded again, it's going to create another cut in the exact same spot. Water does that. You can fix it all as much as you want, but unless you change the elevation somehow and the configuration as to whether or not water can get in there, it's always going to go in that spot. Fix it every single time or don't. It's going to go down that spot. So you would have to build it up or put vetiver along the banks of that stream. Like I said, the roots go down 20 feet. It can get kind of tall, but it has a tensile strength of steel. I want to get these folks on the Ki'ilai Stream to plant some of it. And I would imagine that after a heavy rain and this stuff is established, and if soil gets worn away, we will see a wall of vetiver roots. And all the soil behind it would still be there. This one particular farm, it ate, I would say the Ki'ilai Stream ate about 10 feet of their front yard last year. Goes another 15 feet, it's going to start munching on the front porch. So water can be very destructive. Water is one of the most destructive forces around. I'm from New England. I don't know if you could tell by my accent. New Hampshire's Old Man of the Mountain. It's the iconic image of New Hampshire, the Old Man of the Mountain. It's in granite. In New England, water freezes. It expands. That's really amazing. You got potholes. The Old Man of the Mountain, this granite outcropping, fell to the bottom of the mountain. because of water. Just took out this huge granite outcropping. Water is very powerful. Yeah, very powerful. It can bring a lot of harm. It can bring a lot of good. I could keep talking forever, so I'm just going to go over some of the stuff that's in here. I'm going to leave the cover crop conversation to Steve. This piece of information is basic soil health information. If you read this and learn something about it, apply it to your yard, your residence, if you're a homeowner, if you're a farmer or a rancher. What you learn while you're reading this, apply it to your land. This is good stuff. This article from Atlantic Monthly Magazine, I included this because it just really blew my mind that Atlantic Monthly Magazine, a national publication, found time and space in their magazine to write about soil and the benefit of soil and how important it is. Greenwell Farms, they were a Cooperator of the Year recently, and they hired an on-staff biologist. And one of the first things they did was go to various areas of the farm where they thought they would have Roundup or glyphosate buildup. They didn't find any. What they found instead was a very weak microbial population. Remember, healthy soil has microbes galore. Unhealthy soil does not. So they found pockets of very unhealthy soil. And they found pockets of very healthy soil, and with all the microbes. And they took some of that healthy soil and started feeding it molasses and some other things and amended it. And so the microbial population was just really, you could all see it crawling up the barrel, I bet. They took that, and where the soil was really poor, they grafted the supercharged microbe soil into the poor soil, just a little trench, sprinkled the good healthy soil in it and backfilled it. With the idea in mind that this stuff is, because it has room to grow, it has room to increase its population, so why not? Most animals, creatures do that. So they're going to improve their farm by improving their microbial population, making their soil healthier. And so this is an article about the importance of soil microbes. The aspect of Roundup that killed those soil microbes kill our stomach biota as well. I know a lot of folks have some really tough weed issues. They aren't grassy weed issues. Grassy weed issues you deal with a weed whacker and you feed your soil, right? Everybody's going to start feeding their soil. There are more difficult weed issues, and they're woody plants, like a lantana or something. But this brochure has information on how to deal with woody weeds. Everybody's interested in the ohia, rapid ohia death. There's information on that. Our forests have a really horrible weed called Costa's Curse. If you ever see it, rip it out. I'm getting real quick.
Okay.
Nutrient availability in your soil. Get your soil tested. Check your pH. If you have really acidic soil, don't even bother putting down nutrients. You'll be wasting your time and your money. They will not be available to your plant. You have to bring your soil pH up. Steve can probably speak to that. An article on testing your soil. Those microbes, you can make your very own microbes indigenous to your land. And biochar is another soil amendment that has been around for thousands of years. As a matter of fact, the spot on the planet with the most fertile soil is a place where they made biochar by some indigenous population down in South America.
Already.
And after Steve speaks, I guess we'll have Q&A.
That's right. Thank you very much, Mary. My great-grandma always says to us children, always learn something new every day. And I've certainly learned a lot tonight. And I hope you guys did too. And as Mary mentioned, after our second speaker finish with his presentation, we will have an opportunity to ask questions. And I'm sure you have a lot of questions from just Mary's presentation alone. Thank you very much. So, Steve, you will now have 10 minutes to do your presentation.
Sorry.
No worries. Okay, our next speaker is Steve Sakala, and he is the president of the local chapter of the Hawaii Farmers Union United, which is part of the oldest agriculture organization in the country. Hawaii Farmers Union United is affiliated with the National Farmers Union and is recognized and respected as a voice for farmers, ranchers, and fishermen throughout the Hawaii Islands. Steve Sakala has been a leader in the sustainability movement for almost 20 years. He believes strongly in the power of models as a tool to demonstrate the simplicity and necessity of sustainability. He has dedicated his adult life to building such models. Steve is founder and co-owner of Honaunau Farm, a 7.5-acre model farm that focuses on diversified agriculture, education, and community building. He has educated hundreds of students from all over the world at Honaunau Farm on a wide variety of sustainability issues. Steve has been a sustainability consultant for 15 years, including several years in West Africa. He has been living and working in Hawaii for the past 10 years and has worked on a diversity of projects, including renewable energy, permaculture, green building, animal husbandry, and soil health. Please welcome Steve Sakala.
Thank you very much, and I would also like to thank the Community Enterprises for the invitation, and to the lovely ladies on each side for being up here with me as well. And thank you, Mary, for bringing so much amazing information that I'm sure all of us will find very useful over our time. So I didn't expect an introduction, thank you. How many of you know what permaculture is? Just a quick show of hands. A few of us. So my farm is based on permaculture principles. And what that really means is that we're looking at ways to create agriculture systems that become more permanent. Traditionally in our country, our agriculture systems are very temporal, very unpermanent. Monoculture is our primary agriculture system and has not boded well for soil conservation or water use. So many of the issues that Mary talked about are our biggest concern in agriculture. So I'm going to approach our issues tonight from a very agriculture lens. I'm a farmer. I've been a farmer for 20 years. I've been farming here in South Kona for 10 years, and I hope have begun to implement the solutions. And so I'll focus on some of the solutions to some of the issues that we've raised tonight. And Mary touched on many of them. I'll try to go a little bit deeper into them, and then we can go into the question and answer for folks that want more information. So one of the things that I get to do as president of the local chapter of the Farmers Union is I get to talk about regenerative agriculture. So we may know what permaculture is with its diversity as a foundation, but what is regenerative agriculture? It's really the next step beyond sustainability. Sustainability has become a word that we use very freely now. The corporations get to use it in regards to finances, and Monsanto uses it in regards to their business model. But really, what does sustainability mean? And at its root, it means to sustain, correct? And as a farmer, I'm always thinking, how do I get beyond just sustain? Because that's not necessarily where I want to be at for the rest of my life, although it's a good start. So what's that next level beyond just sustainability? And the word that comes to mind and is now being used more regularly is regenerative. And there's different ways to look at regenerative. One is just to look at it from an agriculture perspective. And so a definition for regenerative agriculture might sound like this: a subsector practice of organic farming designed to build soil health or to regenerate soils. Another way we might define it is it describes processes that restore, renew, or revitalize their own sources of energy and materials, creating thriving systems that integrate the needs of society with the integrity of nature. So, right, we're not separate from nature, and most of what we do needs to serve us. But how do we do that without compromising the natural systems? Because we see the result. Mary talked about many of those examples. Destroyed homes from erosion upstream, degraded systems that perhaps then make their way to the ocean and are destroying our reef systems. We're talking about families and nature. And so the solutions address both of those. And regenerative agriculture is a way that we can get more out of our agriculture systems by implementing solutions that conserve our soil, build the soil web based on microorganisms, and really then allow us to be more of a thriving society and culture. So Mary mentioned several of the solutions, and one of the main techniques that I use on my farm is cover cropping. So there are many different options for the cover crops. Mary has compiled a wonderful list here. I'll just go through a couple of them quickly. Buckwheat, sun hemp, ryegrass, several types of clovers. So I would encourage you to look at this list. 3 or 4 of the ones that I use on my property are the sun hemp. Perennial peanut is a really popular one in Hawaii. It's great in the orchards. It takes some weed management to get it established. It doesn't like to dry out very much, but once it gets established, it's beautiful, little yellow flowers, looks gorgeous. I would highly recommend it. White clover, I'm experimenting with, mixed results. You know, everything that we do in these regenerative systems and these sustainability solutions, we're reinventing the wheel in a way. I wish we weren't, but we've lost a lot of the indigenous wisdom. But these techniques are there, and so a bit of this is experimental. You'll have to look at your rainfall amounts, the types of soils, how thick your soils. I wish I had 2 feet of soil. I've got 1 inch, maybe, right? And so I'm doing things that really build soil. In the natural environment, it takes 500 years to build 1 inch of soil. We can speed that up. And so the cover cropping is one way to do that. Mulching is another way to do that. Composting certainly adds to that. All of those are solutionary ways to water conservation and soil conservation. So sun hemp is a great plant, grows very quickly, has more height than a lot of the other cover crops that we'd be looking at. So if you need something that provides extra height, a little bit of a visual barrier, grows quickly, then that would be a great one. Pigeon pea is a really famous one, used throughout the world. What I love about pigeon pea is it's an MTF, a multi-use purpose plant. Okay? So it doesn't just protect the soil, it doesn't just do what we need as far as taking nitrogen out of the air and putting it in the soil. It does so many other things. It provides a high forage crop for animals. It's got more protein than alfalfa if you have sheep or goats or some of these other animals. And it provides a bean or a legume that we can use for our own food source. So not only does it do all these other wonderful things, but we can actually eat off of it. So I highly recommend pigeon pea. And then there's this, many of us consider somewhat of a demon of a weed, and that's Desmodium. Desmodium can be also an ally, and there's a lesser invasive Desmodium species that doesn't have the little sticky seeds on it, and that one is really great because it's still a nitrogen fixer. It doesn't vine as much. It doesn't have sticky seeds, and that's a great one to look at also as a cover crop. So please use this list, and if you haven't already, go into the NRCS office. There's a world of resources in there and wonderful people to talk to like Mary, many experts in their fields, and programs to assist us as farmers or as homeowners. And so I've taken advantage of those. I can't recommend them enough. And it's a local resource. The office is right in Kealakekua. Do go and visit them, and you won't be disappointed. Mulch. How many of you use mulch? Right. It's an easy one for us, right? It's one of the easiest solutions to implement. You can go to the dump and get it. There are some concerns about bringing things in off farm, and that's why we create the regenerative systems where we can create as much of that mulch on site as possible. But until then, get mulch where you can, and be cautious. Check for fire ants, keep it in a pile, test it for a while before you put it out and disperse it onto your farm. I try and create my own mulch by taking down, well, first I plant trees that are nitrogen fixing, and then I cut them back once or twice a year, and I chip it. And so I have my own mulch. And the amount of microorganisms that come from a nitrogen fixing tree that's mulched is incredible. If you just put it out, give it some moisture, and maybe even inoculate it with some IMOs, some indigenous microorganisms, or some biochar that's been inoculated, you will see microbe growth in a matter of days. It's that beautiful white fuzzy stuff that you think, is that good or not good? It's good, okay? So mulch is your friend. And not only does it protect the soil, but it builds soil. Carbon, right? It's a carbon-based material. Carbon is essential for healthy soils. It creates the subsurface for the microorganisms, it adds to water retention, and it also suffocates weeds, and it also protects the soil evaporation for that dry season. So many of us don't have county water in South Kona. I'm included in that. So come the end of the rainy season, I mulch all of my fruit trees, and I can get away with 4 months, like we just did in this dry season, of no irrigation water, as long as my trees are mulched. So mulch is absolutely an essential piece of, I think, in my opinion, regenerative farming and soil protection. Compost is another way to protect soils and add to water retention. It's similar to mulch. It's mulch broken down and perhaps added in with some other fun microorganisms and an extra nitrogen. But I use it as mulch. I protect it with a little extra mulch on top. But compost is another real easy solution. You can use your guinea grass. You can use anything off your farm to create compost. And if you want, go get mulch, let it sit for a year, and then you have compost. So there's another great reason to get mulch. So one of the techniques that we use in permaculture, it's one of our most popular techniques for soil and water management, is what we call a swale. A swale is essentially a ditch with a berm on the lower side, or the downhill side. What we can do with that ditch is we can slow down the water, because when water has more velocity, right, it has more carrying capacity. So the more slope that you have, the faster the water runs, the more carrying capacity it has. It can move more soil, or in some instances, big rocks. So what we want to do with swales is we want to slow the water down, which means that it doesn't have as much carrying capacity. And when it hits those little ditches, then it drops the sediment out, so you're keeping the soil where it is and should be, and you're slowing water. So it has a double action. And then in addition to that, it allows the water to infiltrate. And so then you're rebuilding a water table or keeping that water on your farm. Now, a ditch sounds nice, right? But in South Kona, we don't have any soil to dig ditches with. So I've taken on my farm what is a great idea and had to adapt it to our environment, our local environment. So what I do is I use banana trunks. A lot of us can grow bananas, even in our rocky soils. They're a great vegetative material. They grow fast. They're one of the things that you can produce food on your farm within the first year because they're an annual. And when I harvest my bananas, I drop my banana stalks on contour. So contour are the lines that you see on a topography map that based on elevation. So you want to use your contour, keep it at the same elevation, so that then you can build that soil behind it. So I'm not digging ditches, I'm just putting banana stalks on contour. Now you could use rocks. You could use 6 inches, a foot high rocks, also to build a swale. Anything that breaks the momentum of the water will cause it to drop out sediment, or it will keep your mulch where you want it. Many of us have wild chickens, right? It's like those little suckers. They move all the mulch around, they put it where we don't want it, they move it downhill. How do we keep that mulch when we do bring it onto our farm where we want it? We want it around our fruit trees, we want it around our coffee plants, we want it where we want it. So we put it there. Banana stalks and swales, rocks, whatever you need to build will keep that mulch where it is. So that, for me, has changed the landscape of my farm almost overnight. Even if the chickens come, they dig up that mulch a little bit, it only goes 5 or 10 feet because I have my swales every 10 feet, and it's right there where I want it. And then when you add your fertilizer, you can just take that round-nosed shovel, throw a little bit of that mulch or dirt that's gathered up behind that banana stalk or rock swale, and throw it over your fertilizer, and then you've protected your fertilizer and your investment. Fertilizer's not cheap, it's an imported cost. Make sure you protect it. It's volatile when exposed to air and sunshine. So when you're fertilizing, you want to make sure you cover that with soil, mulch, compost. So by building those swales, you have that little bit of soil or extra mulch to throw back over your fertilizer. What's interesting about swales as well is you can actually divert the water. You might also know the swales as conservation swales or diversion ditches. Those ditches that move water to where we want them. You can fill up a reservoir, you can make a little pond, you can build up a water reserve for those dry season moments. So we already use them. You might not call them the same thing that we do in permaculture, but we use them, and road services uses them. We already have the idea, but let's use them for soil and water conservation and really tap into that mindset of how do we make the regenerative systems work for us and serve nature. And one of the things I wanted to say about regenerative agriculture and permaculture is that really it's not somewhere that you reach. It's not a destination. I'm now regenerative. I'm now sustainable. It's a journey, right? And we hear so many metaphors about this. And so what we like to say about the Farmers Union and what we do in promoting regenerative agriculture is we're not claiming to be regenerative or sustainable. What we do is we know the direction we're headed. And so these solutions and the information that has been presented tonight, really, we just hope that you turn in that direction and move toward sustainability, to move toward regenerative agriculture practices so that we become good neighbors, that we build a community around us, that we honor the A'apua system. And so I hope that we can see that there are easy solutions to do that, to respect our neighbors, to respect the nature, respect the systems that we put so much time into as farmers, and just head in that right direction. So thanks for your attention and for being here tonight, and look forward to answering questions along with the two ladies.
Thank you very much, Steve. I hope you all were taking notes because there were certainly some interesting things that were said tonight. Okay, so now the floor is open for questions. So if you have a question, I'll come to you and you can certainly ask your question.
Thank you, Jane. My name is Pam Gilbert Bugbee, and I have a question about pigs. I do my very best not to eat their meat, but I would think that would make them appreciate the fact that I am enabling their survival, but I don't want them to survive on my property. Mary, you've been kind enough to visit our property, and you may have noticed that there is some evidence of pigs that come nocturnally, and I'm wondering, is there a certain kind of music they don't like to listen to at night, or is there a gentle way of dissuading them from paying a call on us?
The most effective way to control access for pigs is a hog wire fence, but it's expensive. And you need to rent a drill to install the T-posts and all the posts. Other options are an electric fence, which comes with greater maintenance issues because it can short out if vegetation grows up along it. If you're along a road, an electric fence might work if you clear out the vegetation, put down some weed fabric or cardboard. Cardboard is your friend, like mulch.
Absolutely.
Cardboard is an awesome thing. Put down a couple sheets of cardboard, put some gravel or some rocks on top, put in your electric fence, and now for some length of time you will not have a maintenance issue along that electric fence line. It would not be a good solution in the Mauka land around forest land. There's just too much vegetation, and it would take too much effort, I think, to do the electric fence. If you're going to have to go through that effort for an electric fence up along the forest or in the forest lands, you got to go hog wire. And not only the pigs, but if you're up there, you might be dealing with mouflon sheep, regular sheep, goats, as well as feral cattle. So if you're down in a more urban area, electric fence could be your solution. If you're on a 5-acre farm, next to a 5-acre farm all around, that's where you're going to need the hog wire fence. With all that said, if you go down the road to the place of refuge, there is somebody on the north side who's put one piece of roofing material, the corrugated roofing material, along a barbed wire fence. That has now controlled pig access. So if you can get your hands on some of this used roofing material, you can control access. I actually had a landowner who had a pig problem. They were coming onto her land in one spot. She took some of that roofing material and laid it down over their trail, and she never saw them again, as if the pigs don't like walking on it. Now that might be like an individual pig thing, because I've had other farmers say that that's not the case. So sometimes it's just ingenuity.
Thank you very much. Pam has a follow-up question, I believe.
Aside from fencing, you've seen our property, and we really don't feel like investing in fencing at this time. A neighbor told me about some sort of fertilizer or something that can be added to the soil that's a deterrent, and I'm wondering if you could remind me. It was either me.
I'm not aware of that. I would imagine that it would probably have to have the scent of a predator, something the pig considers a predator. We are the only predator for the pig, and we're not doing a good enough job, I'll tell you. Those pig hunters, get out there and start hunting.
Go ahead, Steve.
I have a 7.5 acre farm, and I had pig problems. The NRCS assisted me with some fencing. I raised sheep, goats, and a variety of other small poultry, but it didn't protect my whole farm. Having 2 dogs absolutely changed my reality. I have virtually no pig problems, haven't had any pig problems in 3 years. And so, you know, it's a big thing to take on dogs, but if you don't want fences, I see dogs as the only other option.
They have to be big dogs. Where I live, there are 2 little dogs.
Little dogs don't cut it.
11-pound Chihuahua and a 30-pound
Do it.
French
Chihuahua
Bulldog.
wouldn't
They
that
don't
be
cut
do
it.
it.
Not quite.
All right.
Shepherds.
Okay, another question here from Harold.
Thank you. My two-part question is for Steve Takata. I missed the crux of your message about the importance of carbon in the soil, and the question following that would be, how do you implant carbon in the soil?
Yeah, great question. So there are easy ways to get carbon in the soil, and we talked about 2 of those ways, and that is actually all of the solutions that I mentioned add carbon into the soil. Cover cropping, weed whacking, anytime you get a woody material onto your farm, you're adding carbon. So by going and getting a load of mulch or chipping up any of your old trees or your weed trees, African tulip is a great tree to chip. And so anything that you can chip up or pay your local tree trimmers to bring a load of wood chips to your farm, you're adding carbon. Biochar is also a carbon source. So if you're going to start using biochar, which is it's being advocated by in the Korean natural farming system. And if you're not familiar with Korean natural farming, it's something definitely worth looking into. There's classes being offered most regularly now, both on Hilo and here in Kona. So biochar is a great carbon source. And so what carbon does is it creates a surface for the microorganisms to live. Part of what we know very little about in agriculture is the soil web. We know more about our galaxy and the universe than we know about the soil web, honestly. And so what the carbon does is it creates those little apartment buildings for the microbes to hang out in and to feed in. And that's what really brings health to our soils. And so as a regenerative farmer, I'm trying to build soils, I'm not trying to grow plants. And that's really an indication in my mind of a good farmer. And the more that we can contribute to our soils through carbon, then we're giving the soil the building blocks to be a healthy soil. So the carbon is the foundation to a healthy soil, and compost, mulch, and cover cropping will do that. Yeah, thanks for the question.
Okay. There's another question. Please state your name.
My name is Stephanie Youngert, with a J, and I have a question. First of all, I help run the school garden for Kahakai, and we've had a terrible time. We got a gift, and it wasn't a gift. It's a horror, because we have nutgrass that is impossible. I've shown the kids how to dig deep and to get the little nuts out, but it is an endless task. How can we get them out? What should we do with that soil? Just take it off the land, or how do you get them out?
Yeah, it's a pain, but you can deal with it.
One by one.
Yeah, I like to solarize the real pesky weeds. And so the best way to solarize it is to cover it with a black plastic for 2 or 3 months. And it works a lot better in the dry season than it does the wet season. So once you have the end of the rains come October, November, get your black plastic out. And if you have to, dig out all the soil in the beds. If it's in garden beds, make a pile of it, cover it in black plastic, and leave it for the dry season. Solarizing heats it up. It deprives it of oxygen and light and water. And usually after a few months of being solarized under black plastic, you can get rid of those pesky weeds, whether it's nutgrass or some of the others. You can do that in a way with cardboard. it, again, works much better in the dry season than it does in the wet season. Put your layer of cardboard, cover it with at least 2 to 3 inches of a heavy mulch, not a light mulch, a heavy mulch. And, you know, if it lasts through the dry season and we don't get too many rains in the dry season, that will also solarize it. Those are my 2 ways that I deal with pesky weeds. I don't know if you have any additional, without poisons, of course.
Another solarization option would be to use a clear plastic. We did that on a cover crop trial down south.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to kill all the weeds. The problem is we killed everything. We sterilized the soil.
Yeah.
So there was no microbial activity, there was no weeds, there was no nothing. I don't know if it's easier to come back from a sterilized soil by adding microbes or adding indigenous microorganisms, but if you use clear plastic, I think you'll have great success. When we did this trial, we did clear plastic in a couple of different places. The one that sterilized the soil was the one that was all weighted down with rocks around the corners, around the edges, and there were no ventilation slats cut in the plastic. So we were trying to enhance germination. So all the other ones, we cut ventilation slats. So when it did get really hot in there, that heat was able to escape. But with a clear plastic, it also acts like as its own little water cycle. Because as the sun heats it up, you'll get some condensation on there, and that water will recycle back in. But you really have to use those ventilation slats. We did it as a way to enhance germination. But without ventilation slats, we learned we could sterilize the soil.
Oh, Steve, were you going to add something to that?
I was just going to say, if the goal is to kill the weeds, sterilizing isn't necessarily a bad thing, because then you're killing the weed seeds as well. But you do need to re-inoculate once you've accomplished your goal. So adding a fresh layer of compost would be a way to re-inoculate that. You could spray IMOs if you're doing a Korean natural farming system. You could cover it with mulch and create a sublayer for the microorganisms, and that would re-inoculate it. But it would re-inoculate fast. But in my opinion, sterilizing the soil for a pesky weed is what you're trying to do. Yeah.
Another suggestion, as you were saying that, what if somebody grew cover crops in one area and cut them down and carried them over and put them on the sterilized soil?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Another question here.
Mary, when you were kind enough to come visit our property, I was very embarrassed about letting you see my vegetable garden. I'm an urbanite, I'm a neophyte gardener, and it was flooded with weeds. And you made a comment that lingers. I want to write a song about it. You said, embrace your weeds. Could you say
your
a
little
bit about
garden,
that?
just the way it was, if you put cardboard on top of those weeds, because the cardboard is carbon is going to seek out nitrogen. And if it does, if you don't give it nitrogen, it will seek out nitrogen that your plants would want to use. That layer of green weed, if it's green, it has nitrogen in it. So you put cardboard right on top. Mm-hmm. And then now that cardboard will not take nitrogen from anything you're growing in your vegetable garden. It will take it from those weeds.
That's very interesting.
And
Steve.
that's an extremely important point when you're talking about carbon in an agriculture system. It was one of the challenges when the Korean natural farmers started adding biochar on their agriculture systems. In nature, carbon always wants to balance with nitrogen. It's the carbon-nitrogen ratio, right? And so they were throwing this biochar thinking it's going to really do great things. Well, what happened initially was it stole all the nitrogen from the agriculture system because it wanted to balance itself out. So it's important to know that if you're going to use a carbon source in your agriculture system, especially in your vegetable garden or on your annuals, it has to be supersaturated with nitrogen. So now what they do is they advocate that if you have a biochar product, if it's not already mixed with a nitrogen source, put it in a trash can, put it in something that's impervious, put some water in it, and put a nitrogen fertilizer in, preferably a compost, something organic.
Chicken manure?
Chicken manure, any manure would work. So that's just something to remember. You really need to make sure that if you're going to add a lot of carbon to an annual agriculture system, to make sure that there's some nitrogen there. If you need to throw down your nitrogen fertilizer before you put down a mulch to make sure that it's there, do that. But you'll learn the hard way if you don't.
Thanks, Steve. We have another question here.
Hi, I'm David. How effective is it to disc under weeds? Just uproot them, throw them back inside, or use a hoe and disc them below the surface? Is that effective way to get nitrogen back in the soil?
In permaculture, we say there is no waste, right? There is no waste. Nature creates no waste. So it's a matter of finding out how to best use those weeds. What I have found in South Kona, especially in the rainy season, if you just disc the weeds and turn them over, you're creating an issue because they're not dying. They'll resprout, especially things like hono grass, things like that. Disking them and turning them over isn't enough to kill them because they root out at every node. If you're going to dig them and turn them, it's better to go ahead and cover them with something, whether it's a mulch, but again, cardboard, plastic, something to solarize it first before you expose it will help to knock them back. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
We have another question here too.
You know, there's so many new subdivisions coming up again in South Kona, 2-acre, 3-acre lots. Subdivision is taking place, it's a reality. But at least there's a mechanism to encourage proper management, because you have to, I don't know if you have to submit a farm plan or ag plan when you do some of these projects. So what you're saying tonight is so common sense. So how do we get that in reality into that early stage where a subdivider is told just what you just said? You know, don't do this, don't do that, do this instead. And if there's a person who comes up with a farm dwelling project, that person is told these are the recommendations we have. You know, it's somebody in the planning department just looking at a blueprint going, okay, here's a site plan, and that's all that's happening. And then this landowner is the person who needs guidance and, you know, maybe coercion.
One of the challenges with subdivisions, and this is a part of watershed management we have not touched on at all, that is hardscape. When we had those floods last year, with the mapping software I have access to, I was able to determine that there's 43 acres of hardscape in the La'aloa subdivision, 375 homes. I gave each home an average 2,000 square foot roof, and then on the mapping software, on the map, I measured out the sidewalks and the roads. Driveways were not incorporated. Sidewalks, roads, and roof structures. 43 acres of hardscape. For every inch of rain in the La'aloa subdivision, there's 1 million gallons of stormwater runoff. So that's an issue with subdivisions and just watershed management, is dealing with stormwater runoff off of hardscapes. Everyone in Hawaii, in my opinion, should have some catchment capacity off of your roof. Steve was talking about the federal programs. NRCS has in the past been able to assist people with catchment. When you talk with NRCS, they have a little bit different. They use the same words, but it means a little different. If I say catchment here, somebody thinks there's a tank and it's filling up with water. If you say catchment to somebody at NRCS, they're thinking just your roof. That's the catchment. And then you need gutters, and then you need a storage facility. And they'll even call the same physical-looking storage facility 2 different things depending on how it gets filled. Okay, with that said, so that is the toughest thing. The planning department we had a meeting with the planning department, all the SWCDs on the island, research and development, because that's where we get funded. We get our funding through the county. Thank you, thank you. A lot of us appeared in front of a county council meeting last year saying, give our farmers help. But we recently had a meeting with some in the planning department, and they are going to start using us to pretty much ensure that somebody who puts forth a request for an agricultural dwelling is actually doing agriculture on their land. And it may come down to somebody who wants an agricultural dwelling has to become a cooperator, has to have a farm plan, and that whole process and that whole thought process is just in its infancy now. We just had that meeting last fall, and someone in the planning department sent me an email with 2 people that are listed on it, or 2 people's names, and I replied back, one is a cooperator, one has a conservation plan, the other one I've never heard of. So come be a cooperator at your local soil and water conservation district.
Very good. Go
I'd
ahead,
like to
Steve.
respond a little bit too.
Yes.
I think that you brought up a really important issue, and that is that, in my mind, I call that upstream education. Really, we do have to educate our planners. There's so much of this information available. How do we get it to the people that need it? The USDA has good agriculture practices. We call them GAPs, right? The information isn't difficult. It's very common sense, as you said, but it's making sure that people understand that it's imperative to do these things. We can't make them do them because it's private property, but we can encourage them to do that through education and perhaps through better programs through the county, where the county comes in and says, all of the planners have to come and do an education workshop with the Soil and Water Conservation District, so that when they do approve a subdivision, those contractors are obligated through a county program to know what options they have to make sure that they do good planning. A lot of planners aren't doing that, and that's really their job, in my opinion. We're not just urban planners, we're developers of a rural community in this instance, so they have to be educated. And most planners are. I have a planning degree from my background, and we had a very good foundational education in all the sciences, but it has to be implemented. So it's an upstream education process.
To Steve's point in that upstream education process for planners, I would recommend that they meet with all SWCDs on the island. Kona is very different than Waimea and Hamakua. Hamakua has soils with a T factor of 5. They have soil you can dig forever over in Hamakua and never reach a hardscape. So everything is different over there. And when he talks about incentive, NRCS, the national agency, or the federal agency, they have a program called EQIP, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. And they incentivize you to start practicing good farming methods with financial assistance to implement them. If you want to try cover cropping, come in, apply for the federal programs. They aren't getting as much money as they used to. And you get ranked against everybody who applies, and the higher your ranking number, the more likely you are to get funded. If you want a tip on getting a high ranking number, have practices that put roots in the soil. Mulching alone or irrigation alone is not going to give you a high ranking number, and you won't get funded. NRCS wants roots in the soil. If you want a fence, do you want NRCS to help pay for a fence? Forestry. Agroforestry. If you're in a residential situation and you have pigs and you want help with the fence to keep them out, NRCS has a practice called agroforestry, where up to 4 acres of your land can be incorporated into this. And they have to go on your land and see what's there. There are some regulations regarding existing native stem counts. I think it's if you have more than 30% of your existing stem count is native, you don't qualify. If you have 4 acres and 1 acre is already in agroforestry, which might be the case on Steve's farm, they will only help you with 3. So they will help you get up to 4 acres of agroforestry on your land. They will help cover the cost of planting. 50% of the trees that you plant can be crop trees, and they will help pay for those. 30% have to be native. They'll give you a more extensive list than you'll get in here, but you would get a list specific to your property, your elevation, your soil, and your rainfall of natives that would work on your land. And then the other 20% can be a mix of natives and high-dollar hardwood. So if anybody is here, has grandchildren or young children looking to go to college in 18 years, if you can plant a teak or a mahogany tree, by all means.
Thank you, Mary. We have one more question over here.
Either Mary or Steve, is a water catchment system, does it qualify for funding by the federal government as a means of water management?
If you have county water, it would be difficult. We just received a memo from the person in charge of the NRCS throughout the state of Hawaii, and dependent on the economic feasibility of providing somebody with a catchment tank, it could be provided. Or catchment could be done on a farm basis. Historically here in Kona, they have not really provided a lot of catchment assistance, storage capacity assistance, unless it was related to livestock. And then it was stock water, it was an animal survival thing, and that was a natural resource that NRCS would help you address. If it's water for your farm, historically, they've not done that. But now, I think in Ocean View, or even South Kona, where there is no county water, there is a greater opportunity now for it. Though when they released this information, everybody in all the NRCS offices had all kinds of questions. And when the person in charge of the Kona office called the state office to find out get some answers, person at the state office heard something we hear regularly and we don't like to. Oh, I forgot about Kona. It's so different. No, this probably wouldn't work in Kona. Soil programs that they put out there. We call up, so how are we going to do this in Kona? Oh, I forgot about Kona. So we are notorious for being challenging here. And the catchment is going to be part of that challenge. But it's out there to the field offices that under certain conditions, and I believe it's no county water, you might be eligible for a catchment system, provided it's economically viable.
Thank you, Mary. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Yes, over here.
Hi, my name is Marcy, and I have a question for Miley, or actually more of a request. A couple years ago, we had the county water department come out to the farm to make a public presentation, something like this. And they mentioned that the well that was offline at that time, that they had attempted to repair it and then something had broken, and that they didn't have any replacement parts, so it was going to be many months before the parts got shipped from the mainland. And then sometime in the last couple months, I saw another email through our neighborhood watch group that it was happening again on some other well where there was some broken piece of the well, that then we were waiting many more months. So I'm wondering whether or not you could ask the water department to start having some type of a storage room, backstock of the parts for the wells, so that when they figure out what's wrong and they go to repair it, if something breaks, they can do something about it in weeks instead of this endless months. And I'm noticing a big change in the quality of the water. And I'm only 2 lots from a well, so I don't understand why it's affecting me. But I am seeing more saline in the water, and it's affecting even the houseplants that I water. And so I feel it personally, but it just seems absurd to me when we know how far we are from parts that there isn't some sort of storage facility with extra materials and parts. So is that something you could ask them about?
Oh, definitely. In fact, Staffy Prathis, I've been emailing him back and forth regarding the Haleki'i well, because that I think is one of the wells that was supposed to be up and running in December. And when they were getting ready to test it, that's when the pump blew, or there was an electrical outage of some sort, and then they had to get either the mechanic in or another part in. And I think the last email I got from Staffy, I sent an email to the water department, because I think the Haleki'i well should be almost ready to test, is what I understand. So, but I will check. And also, I think your suggestion about having parts available that we don't have to order it from China or someplace, I think that makes sense. That's totally a valid request, and I'll look into that. And then
thanks for your time. We really appreciate you coming out in the rain to hear these very, very qualified speakers. And Miley, thank you for bringing us down here from the community center and
thank you.
Your constituents.
This is really, I learned a lot. Thank you very much.
So thanks again, and we'll say good night.
Thank you. Mahalo.